25 to 30% of the EV infrastructure is either unreliable or non-operable. So I wanted to do something about that. I remember writing myself that $5 million check, Nico. I got to the point where someone offered me enough for the company that I could have cashed that check, and I tore it up. The company, in my eyes, is worth a lot more. I think it was $20-30 million they'd offer me for the company at that particular time. And I think any entrepreneur has to have that number in his head. What would it take for him or her to walk away from this? He said, look, I've done 17 albums and endless world tours. I'm making my first solo album. I'd like you to come and help me write it. And he said, by the way, you're going to be the only unknown guy on the album, which I was. Ozzy, Osbourne, Jack Bruce from Cream. There were guys from Deep Purple. I signed $1 million record contracts on my own. And the day we sold, I was asked if I wanted to stick around. And I said, no, I've got this idea. And I remember the investor saying, that sounds like a great idea. We'll give you $1 million for startup on it.
Rue Phillips is an entrepreneur's entrepreneur. He is also a musician. He's a podcaster. I find that there are constantly corners of the room that I didn't know that Rue Phillips inhabits. Some of you probably know of Pronto 365, the company he sold for $81 million to Enphase. I first met him while I was at Trina Solar, and he was running a company at the time called Solaris that became True South Renewables. If any of you are familiar with how the O&M industry started, then you'll be familiar with True South, the first truly utility scale operations and maintenance firm here in the United States. But Rue's history is so much more interesting than just True South. Some of you may have come across him through EV Chat, his podcast, or SkillFusion, his most recent journey. And to prove that he is by no means finished in his entrepreneurial career, he was just named one of the top 10 entrepreneurs to watch in 2024 by California Business Journal. Well, Rue, my friend, thank you for joining us all the way from Cornwall. Appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, Nico. I've been a fan of your show for a long time. Thanks for having me.
How do you describe to folks you're just meeting the problem at a high level that you are now trying to solve in your career?
You know, I have a passion for electric vehicles, and I have done since, well, back in the days when I was fixing the chargers for the milk floats in England. You know, back then it was a job. I had no idea I was going to form a career out of it 40, 50 years later. But
for the milk floats, you said?
Yeah, milk floats. These are they're electric carts, and they still go around the UK right now, delivering milk at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And they're electric because they're silent, because you don't want to hear an an internal combustion engine start up and stop, start up and stop. So they use electric vehicles, and they have done since the war in the UK.
I did not know this.
Yes, so my family business was fixing the chargers for when these came back, these fleets in the depots.
Okay. So you had a passion for EVs back since the day of doing this work with your family business.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And then I came to the US in a rock and roll band, which we'll talk about in a little while.
We will.
But, and then I answered an RFP, a request for proposals, on does anybody know about electric vehicle chargers? Well, of course, from my teens working with the family business, I stuck my hand up. I just got out of the music business at the time. Stuck my hand up, so to speak, answered the RFP, and lo and behold, we won. Well, I was selected from 2000 to be part of 20 in Southern California, which was, oh my gosh, it was a great thing at the time that, I was really excited about it.
You installed the very first EV1 charger in California, right?
That's right. Yeah. The mayor of Newport Beach. And so check this out, Nico. I was doing, because of the rock and roll business, they put me doing installations for the movie stars. I mean,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, there's so did a bunch of movie stars, and then another RFP came out, and that's where the birth of EV Connect came up, and myself and some partners got together, answered another RFP. But going back to the problem that we're solving, the EVs have got a bad rap right now. The electric vehicles, a lot of people that I bump into, they say EVs will never take off because there's not enough chargers. And the chargers that are out there are not working. So it's easy for me, when I see a challenge and a problem like that, the first thing I want to do is form a business. That's my entrepreneurial hat comes on. And I want to form a business to make that problem go away.
I mean, I've seen numerous iterations of your instinct to form a business. And honestly, when you sold Pronto, which was an excellent exit to Enphase, I thought that's it. Rue's he's done. He's gonna retire to Seal Beach. He's gonna hang out and play his guitar on his front porch and watch the sunset. But you started this company, SkillFusion. So introduce us to SkillFusion and why it's going to help solve this issue that EVs have a bad rap.
So SkillFusion is it's a software company. It's a digital learning platform whereby what we want to do is bring talent into the electric vehicle industry so that we can solve the problem of EV chargers not working and also meeting this 97% uptime guarantee. So, Nico, you've been in the solar industry for decades. And back in the day, we had, I think it was like a 98, was it, percent uptime guarantee that we had to, stand
for
by.
The projects, yeah.
And as an O&M company, we had a 98% uptime guarantee, which meant if the sun's up, the system's got to be operable. Well, the EV industry has come out with a 97%. And basically, we're not hitting that right now. I mean, we're getting, I hear numbers of 25 to 30% of the EV infrastructure is either unreliable or non-operable. So I wanted to do something about that.
So upwards of 30% of the current EV infrastructure is inoperable or suboptimized.
Yes, exactly, suboptimized. So I wanted to do something about that. And how could I do it? I'd already, formed a company with the Uber-like app, which was 365 Pronto, where a technician could receive a ticket based on the condition of a smart device. What we didn't do at Pronto was train the individual and bring them to the market. And there were, I think there's something like 680,000 electricians, licensed electricians across the United States, that need to be educated that there is a future, in renewables. For SkillFusion, we wanted to address the electric vehicle part of the renewable sector.
What solutions exist as you surveyed the landscape?
First off, I'd like to say we were the only ones doing what we're doing. That's always, good for any entrepreneur to say. But this training solutions are the number one, how someone can get involved if you're an electrician or if you have no experience at all. The solution is getting trained, certified, and compliant to work on this. Again, you've been in the solar industry for decades, and anybody wanting to get into that there is there's a component to training in doing so.
So as you surveyed the landscape, though, kind of trying to think through how to improve this infrastructure, something didn't meet the litmus test for you. I mean, absent the availability of SkillFusion, and I see an opportunity and I want to get trained to just be a technician in the EV landscape, what's the path to success for me right now?
The path to success is, first off, educate yourself on the market, number one. You've got to find out what the EV industry is all about, what it started from, who the manufacturers of the vehicles are. That's the first and foremost, is to know
Yeah.
the industry.
Right.
Secondly, the colleges and universities, they're really not going to do it. You're going to literally want some kind of hands-on mechanism of some sort to get you involved. And secondly, get a job in the industry. Right now, they are crying out for apprentices. Join an apprenticeship program is another one.
Yeah.
There's the IBEW, which are out there, which are looking for electricians. You know,
Yeah.
it's been stated that we are going to need 80,000 more electricians every year just to cater for the forecasts of electric vehicles by 2030, 2035. 80,000 electricians a year in the United States is what we're going to need. So what we use building blocks. They're called micro tracks. So depending on what your status of experience, competence, and certifications are, whether you're a novice, that you have no knowledge at all of the industry, then you would take micro tracks EDT course 1, level 1.
Right.
So basically what we do is use building blocks based on, you could be a fully qualified electrician, but you want a certification for hands-on to work on DC fast chargers. So once you enroll in the course, we actually take information from you, and based on, again, your skill set levels as to what classes you will take to make you in a work-ready state. Now, that's the important factor here. What we're building is like an Uber-like platform whereby the graduates, so to speak, or people that have completed the courses could actually go to an O&M service provider, and they could actually be either, now you said employees, they could be either, I call them Chuck and his truck, Nico.
Yeah.
So you could be a self-employed electrician, or calling yourself an electrical contractor, or you could be ready for work for a big organization out there. But what we want to do is give you the building blocks to go out there and join the industry.
Yeah. You mentioned that the problem is stated as, effectively build a software company, a digital learning platform that addresses the inability of the industry to meet this 97% uptime guarantee. So then the stated mission by SkillFusion is to improve the electric vehicle supply equipment uptime by effortlessly aligning skilled professionals with the expertise required for every task, ensuring the right person consistently performs the right job at the right time. It definitely builds on, I'll stop sharing here, but I'd encourage folks to check out skillfusion.com. It builds on, in a way, some of the promise or the premise of Pronto. So I can definitely see sort of the learning that was embodied in the prior work. The solutions that exist today, I mean, I love how you actually walked through, know the industry. So there will be, I presume, on SkillFusion some level of macro industry education, and then hands-on mechanism is required. So there will be some level of integrating folks who come through SkillFusion into a skilled trades training program, like the EDT one, and then get a job. So I presume there's some level of like a hiring platform or a job, a sort of opportunity feeder, both from the companies and from the folks that are coming through SkillFusion. Is all of that accurate?
It is indeed, yes.
Okay.
So what we will be we'll be integrating an app. So once you've completed the course, you'll actually have an app, and based on the credentials that you've just acquired will depend on what tickets you could actually pick up to what provider as well.
Okay. Well, I think that as we explain to folks a little bit more about the other businesses you've built, things will become a lot more clear of what you're trying to accomplish here. What needed to be true as you think about the 5, 10, 15 years ago, as you've been building different businesses, what needed to be true today for this business to work that would have caused it to fail 5, 10, 15 years ago if you'd tried? Because you've been in the industry for 30 plus years. You've been since the very beginning of the electric vehicle industry. So what's true? What needed to be true today for this to work?
Public awareness. I think public awareness that, towards the electric vehicle industry, SkillFusion, like I say, right now we're aimed at electric vehicles. 15 years ago, it just wasn't happening. I say 15 years ago, 27 years ago, I was putting in EV chargers and driving an electric vehicle, and people were laughing at me.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my wife and to my friends that, 15, 20 years from now, you'll be driving on a freeway and you will look around, and within 360 degrees, you will see an electric vehicle in your sight.
Yeah.
And
in
just
California,
so
that's absolutely true. Yeah.
It is indeed. In California, you might see 2 or 3.
Yeah.
On the East Coast, it's a little bit of a challenge so far.
But I live in Durham, and I would say that on an average drive, I see one EV, which is more than, when I first bought my Tesla in 2018, I was the only, we would like wave at each other on the street, right? It's like, if two semi truck drivers were passing each other, they're like, oh, another rare bird, now you can't find parking at the Tesla stations. I don't even have my Tesla anymore for that reason, to be honest. But yeah, so public awareness, certainly. Is there anything technologically that even in the recent, since you built your other businesses, has evolved to empower or enable the platform that you're building, the software?
Absolutely. Adoption of the cloud-based apps, makes it easier for the consumer. We're an instantaneous bunch of people now. We want something now. I don't want to I just parked my car here in Cornwall, England, and it was vehicle license plate recognition. So it knew my license
you
plate
didn't even
as
have
I drove in.
Wow. How cool. I didn't know that existed yet.
And I downloaded the app. I paid via my phone and I drove out, and there was no credit card. There was no coins. So I wanted to build a company and a software just built on that. And 15 years ago, that wasn't around.
Well, code, as Naval Ravikant says, one of the 4 levers of the modern economy is code. And so the ability to build software is, in fact, and you're building on 2 of the levers, by the way, content and code. So who do you sell to? When you think about a business model, what problems are you solving and for what client?
So the client could be the operations and maintenance. Let's talk about that. The obligee. I use that word, the obligee. Whoever is obligated for that machine to be operable and reliable. Now, that could be the owner of a portfolio of 500 EV chargers. It could be a municipality or a government body. But whoever the obligee is for that machine, and I call it a machine, folks, it's an EV charger. Back in the day when I was doing True South, that machine was a solar inverter. It's a smart device that talks to the cloud. And whoever is obligated for that machine to work, that is our customer.
Got it. So you're working on their behalf by training people to help them keep that machine running.
Absolutely. Because now, when specifically here in the UK, a machine goes down and it's down for weeks sometimes. In the US, we still put people on airplanes to fix these things, which is ludicrous.
I understand that the obligee is effectively the end client. How do they pay for a service like this?
So they would sign up. Obviously, we would have a purchase order, so it would be fully automated. That's the way we did it with our previous companies. It would be
you're playing a long game then, because you're not. I don't see on the website. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I don't see on the website where somebody can sign up for this service. So you're playing a very long game here, Rue.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
You're
absolutely
basically
right.
saying, I'm going to go build the workforce. Come pay me later.
Yes, that's 100%.
How did you fund it? I mean, for something may sound obvious to this question, but what milestones have you achieved thus far, and how did you get the financial sort of footing for this business?
So initially, just like any entrepreneur, you reach inside your pockets for some crazy idea,
Yep.
and that idea grows because
Yeah.
you push it along. You sometimes get that square peg and you knock it into that round hole.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I prefer private investment, for my
Yeah.
entrepreneurial pursuits. I
Mm-hmm.
like people that I know, to make them partners.
Mm-hmm.
But initially, it's private investment.
Got it. And are you willing to say like just a range at least of how much capital you initially idealize? Like it's going to take about this much money to get this thing through the first couple of years.
Yeah, I think the first couple of years as an entrepreneur, you're looking for $2 million to kind of get your idea to a level where
Yeah.
serious investors, where you can start talking an exit
Yeah.
strategy once you've got a couple of $1 million of initial investment.
One thing I appreciate is you've done this so many times that you could speak in generalities. As a founder, if I've got a core idea and I can build the IP, but I need to be able to pay my team, how much equity should I expect to be able to give or to have to give up for that 2 million in investment? And I know there's a lot of variables of, it could be, is it hardware? Is it software? But let's just stick with software and services.
Software and services, initially money is not cheap.
Mm-hmm.
For the entrepreneur listening to your show right now, Nico, they know money's not cheap. And the earlier you bring in investors, the more you're going to have to give up of the equity, obviously, of the company. Um, Sometimes, in fact, frequently, early investors are going to want a 51% control of the company
Mm.
because they're taking the risk, which is why private investors it's a lot more appealing to the early stages of one's vision. Private investment is the way to go.
Do you have a personal philosophy on how you think about starting the business? Like, I want to start this business. I'm going to go find a co-founder and I'm willing to give up to X% of equity to get it off the ground.
That's a good point. Initially, when I start a vision and write down a business model in my head, first and foremost, I will have an exit strategy. That this idea, I don't want to sell for any less than $50 million. So whatever it's going to take to get this to a $50 million, sale. Now, that's not what I'm going to put in my pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
I've co-founded companies that have sold in excess of $300 million.
Yeah.
And it'd be fantastic if I could say I got to put that, in my bank account. But
Yeah.
it's percentages. I think, first off, most of the companies that I've been associated with, from the ground up, we've allocated at least 10% for employees.
Yeah.
As the guys that have done their sweat equity,
Yeah.
that deserve, their moment of glory.
You get a piece of the action when something happens. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. One of the companies that I founded, it was Pronto. And I remember writing myself that $5 million check, Nico.
Yeah.
That's
Jim Carrey
and
style.
I put it in absolutely Jim Carrey
Yeah. This is the
style.
vision moment. Yeah.
And I got to the point where someone offered me enough for the company that I could have cashed that check, and I tore it up. And
Yeah.
I said, I don't know why I still got this check in my wallet anymore. The company in my eyes is worth a lot more then, and I think it was $20-30 million they'd offered me for the company at
Yeah.
that particular time. But to
Wow.
walk away from it. And I think any entrepreneur has to have that number in his head. What would it take for him or her to walk away from this? Unless you're stubborn, like me, sometimes that the vision becomes a passion, and you
I'm
morph the two together, and you
I'm
become
like you. I'm
Elon
stubborn.
Musk.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
I could have raised money, I'm sure. Well, there's, I know it's questionable. Probably couldn't have raised money because I didn't have a real business until maybe a year or two ago. But building a brand is hard, and one of the things that I really admire is the man. I just think you guys nailed the vision and the brand of SkillFusion. To me, it's very difficult to create an education platform that can compete on a level of a masterclass, Coursera, um, the well recognized education platforms, and
Hmm.
and I think that from a name, a mark, like a brand mark, everything, you guys are well on your way, for sure. So my hat's off to you there. We'll get back
Thank you.
into some of the underlying sort of mechanisms of the business a little bit later. I'd like to dig in a bit to the background because you've got such an interesting and esoteric upbringing. You mentioned growing up in the UK. Are you part of a big family?
No, small family, and
Mm-hmm.
but my uncle was a very, very smart. He's passed away now, but he was a very, very smart. I guess like eccentric guy. He would build things from the ground up. He could fix anything, any machine,
Hmm.
and he would move factories. I mean, literally, full
Oh wow.
factories, and they basically have the air, the water, the electricity, everything ready for this factory to move on a Friday and be operable on a Monday. So the heavy industry.
Wow. And that was the family business.
That was a family business. He would give
Yeah.
me a schematic at the age of, I'd say about 12, 13, and an old television set, and says, everything you need on that schematic is inside that television set. Let me know when you've finished. And one of them that he gave me was a guitar amplifier. And so I
And the
started
challenge,
playing guitar
and Rue, sorry, the challenge is to
from
take it apart and put it back together.
the challenge was to put it to build it, take it apart, build
Ah,
it, and actually operate it. And it was my
yeah,
first radio that was my crystal set, obviously simplistic design, but I was
yeah,
so
and
pleased when I heard music coming from the airwaves from the radio set that I built.
yeah. And so one of those was a guitar amplifier. So effectively, he planted in you this seed of the joy of guitar.
It did indeed. Whilst I was working as an electrician for the company, I'd already got the seed that he planted, to be a rock star. So, and that
Were you a
came a little
musician at
bit
the
later
time?
on.
Yeah,
I
were
was, I
you a
played
family of
violin.
musicians? You
Yeah,
did.
no, just me. I sang in a choir from when I was a really, like 9 years old. And,
Yeah.
I played classical violin for a local orchestra. So, I could
Hmm.
read music, at the time.
Was that an aspiration for you to follow that musical path?
Yes, it was. There was a band called Slade. They came from the local Wolverhampton, became mega stars and big hits in the UK. And so check this out, Nico. The guy played violin. They had a lot of hits, even in the US. And the
It's
guy
called
played
Slade.
violin. Slade, Slade, yes. And
Nice.
yeah, I remember the song "Cause I Love You," and the guy played violin on it. So there I was. I morphed from violin to guitar, and that's it. I wanted to be. I got the flares going on, and formed a rock and roll band, and
You did.
we
So
became we yeah we had some good fun.
So you had more than some good fun. Tell me about coming to the U.S. as a budding. I mean, bear in mind, like for folks, this is the '80s. hair rock. Everybody knows like hard rock, heavy metals really starting to take off. This is the era of bands that a lot of folks would recognize: Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath. You came to the U.S. as a young UK rocker, guitarist.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened during a show at Whiskey A Go Go that changed your life?
So, came to the US 1986 with a three-piece band. We were called Smoking Roadie.
Smoking
And
Roadie.
we were playing the Whiskey A Go Go. We had the Roxy Gazaris, and one night we were playing the Whiskey A Go Go. And I didn't know it at the time, but now my really, really good friend, one of the guys from Black Sabbath, was in the audience, and he
That's
saw my
amazing.
band, and I
Yeah.
got a call shortly afterwards, and I was back in the UK, and it was from Bill, and he said,
Bill Wood. Yeah.
I saw Bill Ward, yeah, and he said, look, I've done 17 albums and endless world tours. I'm making my first solo album. I'd like you to come and help me write it, and play guitar and sing a couple of tracks on it. And he said, by the way, you're going to be the only unknown guy on the album, which I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne, Jack Bruce from Cream. There were guys from Deep Purple,
Oh my
Gary
God.
Moore's bass player. It was just an incredible time. So I was locked in the studio for 2 years as a studio musician. And,
Wow.
during that time, because I'd got writing credits on it, I got a publishing deal with MCA, and,
No way. MCA
yeah,
Records at the
so
time. That's big
MC,
time.
absolutely. Yeah. So, I signed $1 million record contract on my own, which
No way.
helped me get my immigration status, because I remember going to the immigration office and the guy says, why should we give you a green card? And I slapped down a 50-page contract, $1 million record contract. And it says, because I've just signed $1 million record contract. And
I love it.
it stamped my passport, gave me a green card for 10 years. Obviously,
That's amazing.
brought my family over, and yes, and the rest. So I was in the music business then as a professional. I toured the East Coast, made a couple of
Yeah.
albums, and until such a time where I'd had enough, and I jumped off the crazy train uh,
Well, you still had
before
some
it
brain
hit the
cells
brick
left.
wall. Exactly. Before it hit that brick wall, I pulled the cord and says,
What?
I'll get off on the next exit. And rather than go back to the UK, because I'd got a green card, and I wanted to be an American. I loved
Right.
America, and I'd got skills in the electrical industry. So rather
Yeah.
than go back, I had a bit of cash in my pocket. I started an electrical contracting business in California. I got my license. I
Yeah.
went to school. I went to, I
Yeah.
was evening at a local
Wow.
college, and got all my accreditations, and yeah, my first company was formed.
I love it. For those who all want to see younger Rue Phillips with hair, rocking on stage with his red guitar, singing with Ozzy, search Bombers Can Open Bombays, but with Black Sabbath. You'll find Rue on stage playing guitar with Ozzy and Black Sabbath to wow you with his guitar skills. Rue, we need to get you to the next Battle of the Bands. I think we're going to try to do one in early 2025.
Absolutely. I do a mean voodoo child, Nico. So count me in.
I'll tell you what, I've heard Dan Sugar's band play Voodoo Child. I would love to see you and Dan play on stage together. We'll see if we can
Oh my
orchestrate that. That'd be a
gosh.
lot of fun.
That
Yeah.
would be fun.
Uh,
That would be fun.
so you came to America with 10K and a rock band, Lost City. You turned that into a record deal, you turned that into a green card. In your 20s, you're a successful musician. You came into money because you're involved in helping co-produce and co-write. And for those who don't understand how the music industry works, if you're part of helping to produce a song, if you're on the liner notes as one of the songwriters or the producer, then you get paid different levels of royalties. So you in your 20s are getting, generous sums of money, I assume, from being involved in writing this album with Bill Ward. Did you use that money then to fund your ventures, or did you immediately go out and raise money? How did you start thinking about now process of converting that first career into that of an entrepreneur?
It was self-funded. I used my music business money, to fund my first company, and started from the ground up. A little bit of cash, and I must admit I had a couple of failures. I
Really?
fell down a couple of times. Yeah, absolutely. I just didn't know the business.
What did that look like?
Literally, bad bookkeeping, bad accounting, bidding on jobs just because they were large sums of money. I shouldn't have gone near them. Not every job has a silver lining. I remember getting into the solar business, Nico, and when it used to be like $14 a watt installed.
Yeah.
Do you remember those days?
I do.
And
you could make $1 a watt just on install.
You could make $1 a watt, and that's exactly what I was doing.
Oh, wow.
And I was doing megawatt installations, and folks, that's $1 million just for the labor, and my customers were Chevron, BP, SunPower.
How did you know that business was one you could get into? Like, when did you identify in those early days? For just to come back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, in the 90s, in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, you started forming this company, EV Connect. Rama Badapudi was on the show. You guys have a great now. That business that is EV Connect, you effectively started building the infrastructure for back in the 90s. But in the aughts, before you really leaned in heavy to EV Connect and then into True South, you built a couple of other companies as a subcontractor to the solar industry. How did that happen? How did you identify that opportunity way back then?
So that was the easy one, because when I told you I put the chargers in the 90s, I was paid to put them in, and then I was paid to take them out again, believe. And only in America can we do that. We can make a business putting something in, taking it out, and putting it back in the same place. Right. But what I noticed, Nico, was that the people that were driving electric vehicles had solar on their rooftops. Back in the day, they were tree huggers. We call them tree huggers, because they had the early stages of car batteries powering up some DC circuit, the DC lighting, and so they had solar, an electric vehicle. And I thought, wow, rather than, I'm an electrical contractor, I'm used to doing EV chargers. I don't want to get into mainstream electrical contracting, wiring houses and all that. So I got into solar, and initially it was with BP Solar. I liked the idea of working as a subcontractor for a multi-billion-dollar company. There was something about being under the umbrella of a multi-billion-dollar company and being a subcontractor. So when I got into solar, my first customer was BP Solar. And then I got it from doing 5 kilowatt homes to 500 kilowatt commercial jobs, which at the time was $500,000. And they asked me, hey, do you want to do a megawatt worth? And pretty soon I was doing really big installations. That's when the competition came rolling over the hill in their masses. And they took the business pretty much down the toilet as far as an installer went, because, like I say, I was used to doing $1 a watt for 1,000,000 watts, and now all of a sudden it went to 50 cents. and it's, carrying 5,000 panels of glass onto a rooftop or onto a parking lot for 50 cents a watt. It wasn't appealing to me at that
Yeah.
time. So that's when I formed the operations and maintenance company, True South Renewables.
So I remember meeting you. In fact, when we first met, I remember very specifically. I was at Trina Solar. I almost feel like you were in the San Jose office of Trina, but it was definitely maybe it was someone from your team from True South, and you were on a video call, and Mike Grunow and I were on a call with you guys trying to set up a deal with True South and Trina. And I remember thinking, wow, this is really interesting, because I had been involved with a lot of deals with SPP at the time that had just sold to NRG, and I knew how many of their Safeway projects needed maintenance, and how that industry in California was starting to see a lot of problems. A lot of the projects that you had done for BP, they were then now 5-10 years old and starting to get maintenance calls. I'm curious about your thoughts on the evolution of the O&M industry. There's a lot we could talk about, and I don't really want to spend a ton of time on O&M, but in those early days, you saw the opportunity and the need for there being an operations and maintenance component to the service industry. And that's where you've spent a lot of your time, is really helping refine the service side of the industry. Can you talk about the observations you made and how that industry has evolved?
Yeah, I remember, Chevron, who was one of my big customers as an installer, and their panels were dirty. It was in Los Angeles, and we didn't get much rain that year, and there were 40% soil. And they asked me, and they said, "Do you know anybody that washes these panels?" So I didn't know anybody, but I figured, you know what? I know where I can get a water tank and hire a couple of guys, and there were a couple of thousand solar panels. So I gave them a price. I think it was something like $3,500, Nico, to wash a 500 kilowatt system. And guess what happened?
Wow.
The output of the system increased 40%. And they went, wow, could you do more of these? Would you like to do another 5 or 6 schools? So
Wow.
I formed a panel washing company. So initially, True South Renewables was a panel washing company.
Mm-hmm.
And then we figured, wait a minute, if we can increase a solar system just by washing it, what can we do if we fix it when it breaks? If it's down for 2 weeks of the year and we can fix it in 24 hours. So we bought a cherry picker, and I hired a couple of guys.
Right.
And I've got to tell this story. It's a fantastic story. I was you'll probably know, and the company was called GCL, in San Francisco. And I was in San Francisco. Yep. And, I was up on I think it was like the 14th story of this posh office block. And, they said to me, so, I hear you've got an O&M company, and, something about, you can be on site and, a 48-hour response. And I said, yep, that's me. And I had 2 electricians at the time that were doing that locally in Southern California, 48 hours, and I said, yeah, that's me. And they says, okay, we'll think about it. By the time my elevator had gone down to the ground, my cell phone went off, and they said, Miami, Florida, 48 hours. And I said, absolutely. And I basically crapped myself. I was like, are you kidding me? I called my guy in Los Angeles, and I says, okay, get your backpacks. You're going to be heading to Miami, Florida. It was a 1 megawatt project. They paid $6 million for this project. But all I had to do was show up and stop the clock. I didn't have to fix it in 48 hours. I had to respond within 48 hours.
Because they had to show that they were being responsive to the problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Wow. They were the obligee of that asset, and it was a $6 million asset. We fixed it. I found a local contractor, and it happened to be fire ants that had eaten through all the conductors in the combiner boxes. So previously they'd replaced the fireboxes, but they'd never done anything about the fire ants. So we called a local exterminator that, fixed the fire ant problem, fixed the combiner box problem. I went back up to San Francisco and they gave me 50 megawatts worth of projects across the United States.
What?
And within 2 years, we became the largest solar operations and maintenance company in the U.S.
How much of your entrepreneurial journey has in that way been sort of stumbling into an opportunity like that? You position yourself well, right? Like 99% is preparation. And then you seem to stumble into opportunity because you're ready for it.
Indeed. I love the quote from Elon Musk. It's like when something's important enough to you, you do it even if the odds are stacked against you. And it was important to me on that day, to say, yes, we can, and go figure out how to do it. And I think, for any budding entrepreneur that is out there, if it is important to you, then go do it, even if the odds are stacked up against you. If you do it with a passion and stay to the vision, it will come to fruition. I believe that. I do.
What happened to True South?
True South, again, became the largest O&M company. And we wanted to get from commercial systems into the utility scale systems. So we acquired a company called MaxGen. And basically we morphed the two. MaxGen being the utility scale. It all became MaxGen after a while.
Was Mark running MaxGen at the time?
No, Mark was with Sun Edison.
Oh, that's right.
And then we brought him over to take care.
He had gone down to Arizona, right?
That's right.
Right before MaxGen. Like McCarthy for a minute before he came to you at MaxGen.
That's exactly right. Yes. So we had got MaxGen doing, I think it was close to a gigawatt of utility scale. True South Renewables with 1.2 gigawatts of, so we became this big monster. And that's when we brought in Mark McClanahan to do the whole lot. That's when we sold True South Renewables, MaxGen, to Oak Tree Capital. And I took an exit stage left.
And that's now part of, is it Pierce that they're a part of, or is it part of Nova?
They split it up into different divisions. I think the service operations and maintenance went to Pierce Renewables. There was an installation component which turned into Brightmove. But it was great to see the splinter and everything grow. It was awesome. It really was. I got a funny story about that exit strategy. The day we sold Solaris, which was Solaris was the holding company of MaxGen, True South Renewables, and it sold. And the day we sold, I was asked if I wanted to stick around, and I said, no, I've got this idea called Pronto, this Uber idea. And I remember the investor saying, that sounds like a great idea. We'll give you $1 million for startup on it. They offered me $1 million capital. No, because they wanted the lion's share at that time.
Right.
And I'd just been diluted from my previous exit. And I said, lesson number one, guys, out there, dilution. Avoid it at all costs. Avoid dilution.
And do it with your own capital. Go slower if you need to. Yeah. Unless speed is critical to success.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. Yes. 100% of nothing is nothing.
Exactly. Take me to the moment where you were in a car share service, and you realized the way that we're thinking about addressing service in this market is about to be disrupted.
Yes, I was on my way to First Solar in Arizona. I know you know those guys. And I remember taking Uber, and I remember selecting the ride with my thumb, and I remember getting off the other end and paying the guy with my thumb. And I was in First Solar, and there were all these screens on the wall. I mean, literally scores of screens. And we were looking, and it looked like NASA. It was Germany, Italy, Spain, France,
Yeah,
United
I've been in that
Kingdom,
room.
the USA, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It was an amazing knock, the most
It's
amazing knock.
impressive.
And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, one of the sites turned red, and a red light went off. And someone picked up the phone and then says, "Hey, Mikey, I see we got a problem. Yeah, we got an inverter number 27's down. Well, where's Bob? Well, Bob's on his lunch today." And I thought to myself, why couldn't that machine at that location know that Bob was
Solicit.
off, number one? And
Right.
why couldn't it talk to the technician in the way that I just got a ride? And from
Right.
that day, I couldn't get out of that room fast enough to get this idea for 365 Pronto.
So that was circa
So
2018, if I recall, or 2016 maybe?
that's right, 2016, 17, somewhere like that. Just as True South Solaris MaxGen was being acquired, that idea came to me, and you couldn't have stopped me from putting that idea together.
Who'd you put in place? Because you talked about delegating, and you talked about not wanting to be the CEO and taking the president role. Talk to me about how you structured the team for Pronto as soon as you could.
So what we did was I met with Henry, who was working for SMA. He was the president of SMA at the time, and we discussed this. And he said, "You better not do this with anybody else but me." Literally, you better not take this idea with anybody else but me. So I says, "Okay." So he became the CEO. I was the president. We hired a genius code writer, gave him a piece of the action. He turned out he couldn't make it. He just literally, big time wasn't for this guy. So we had scrambles to get a code writing team. We ended up going all over the world for it. We raised $2 million and that came with leadership. And obviously, like I said earlier, with money comes leadership as well. Sometimes the investors want to place themselves in those positions, and that's okay. I stuck around with this one and didn't get diluted as much as I did on the previous, expeditions, I call them. But yes, 365 Pronto came to fruition. The architecture, I was the chief architect, if you like, and the visionary of the business.
What were some of the early assumptions and challenges that you had to overcome to build 365?
The code was a challenge. What I did was, this is a funny story. I wanted it to be Uber-like. I wanted it to be no more than 5 movements of the thumb, in order to operate, to get from a problem to a solution, to turn a red light into a green light with no more than 5 movements of the thumb, which meant that the technician on the other end doing the work had to be paid at that point. So what I did was I got 5 droids, and I shipped them. This was of a real clumsy backbone, a software package, and I got 5 droids with this idea, and I put them in the hands of 5 people all over the world. And I had one in Germany, I had one in the UK, I had one on Chapel Hill with my my partner. I had one in California, and I had one in Canada. And the idea is to use Stripe and do a $1 or €1 or one UK pound transaction in all of these areas with these droids. If I could prove this and do this, I was ready for the next round of capital investment in Fusion. And it worked. And I actually did it. And I
How long
actually
did it
got
take?
a service. It took about a year and a half to get to that point.
What turned out to be the core infrastructure piece that made it work?
I guess the key was to move away from the Droid and go to iOS, go to
No
start
way.
using. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it turns out
It was
the
easier to
code
work with.
underlying the Droid operating system, Android operating system, was not sufficient. You had to move to the. Gosh, that's interesting.
Exactly. Yeah, it was just easier for the development. It was cheaper. And at the time, apps were, most people had got an iPhone. iPhones were just becoming more prevalent at that time.
Right. Of course.
So it was easier to get the technician to adopt the app. So yeah, that was the turning point.
4 years later, you had an exit, which is public knowledge, I think, right? 81 million
Yes.
to Enphase.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about when you start to build the business, and this is now the third, fourth business that you've created, you have an exit in mind. You mentioned that when you built Pronto, you wrote that $5 million check, Jim Carrey style check, and you put it in your pocket, and you thought, and you ripped it up at some point. What was the original threshold that you had in mind that you wanted to build Pronto to? And the process of actually getting to the point where you could sell it to a company like Enphase?
Yeah, I think originally I saw it as a $50 million plus idea and vision. Because at that time, Nico, software companies were fetching 30x, upwards of 30x. And so I really and truly believed that this Uber-esque, my friends called it a Ruber-esque. So it was Ruber. They called my crazy idea Ruber. So I really believed that this Ruber model would one day be in excess of $50 million. And what's funny, when we came to the negotiating table, we actually looked at each other as investors and the senior the executive officers and said, "Do you want to hang in for the big one? This could be a $200 million company." And we looked at each other, and and it was a tough question whether to exit at that particular time.
Do you feel that it is now a like a $1 plus value business to Enphase?
I'm not sure that Enphase wanted to utilize it in the same manner as my vision was. Enphase, as you know, is a worldwide leader in microinverters.
Right.
They also acquired Clipper Creek as a EV charger
the EV
manufacturer. Yep. Which meant that they'd lost that agnostic approach to, could they actually do an API with a competing technology? Absolutely what they got from it was the technology and the software for O&M, but which is what inspired me. I took a short time off after the sale of the 365 Pronto to think about what am I going to do next. And it was too early for me to exit in such a thriving industry. Solar, battery energy storage, and electric vehicles are one day going to come together and talk one common language. I believe that so it was too early. It was way too early for me to exit at that point. So sitting on the beach, I'm thinking, now get your butt up, get back to work, put your guitar down for a bit and
How did you meet Elena Farnsworth? Tell me that story.
so I was doing some volunteer teaching in a class in San Bernardino, and we were teaching high school kids how to come into the solar industry and the electric vehicle and battery energy storage. There was this community of students. There was about 20 students there, and Elena was there also as part of a training program. She was with a company called Next Education, and she was helping the city of San Bernardino, and that's where we met. And I spoke about my past, and I said I'm an entrepreneur, and right now I'm sitting scratching my head about the next thing. And we spoke about this. That yeah, we talked about the Biden initiative and the money that Biden set aside to build electric vehicle infrastructure, and we spoke about how unreliable it was. Now, I got to say one thing: we did not build SkillFusion, and I'm not sure it's a good idea to build any company based on grants. So,
Right.
although there were grants available, I personally don't recommend building a company, solely based on grants. It wasn't something that we did. Although there's a lot of money out there, billions of dollars of money out there for initiative to get
Yeah.
into the industry. So
Yeah.
that's how we met, and we came up with the idea. And I said, "Wow, wouldn't it be great to fuse skill with to fuse skill,
Yeah.
to talent, and it's like Skill Fusion." And that's where
Yeah.
the name came up. And I love the name. I think it's a great name for a
I do too.
software company.
Yeah. And to get skillfusion.com, that's a great, it's a wonderful URL. You told me that when you had put the vision on the whiteboard, you imagined that there had to be an algorithm behind it. What does Elena bring to the team that you didn't have?
Elena's got years in the automotive industry, number one. She knows, you mentioned people from Ford, GM. Oh my gosh, she's so they're coming from Detroit, Michigan. She's all over the auto industry, and also for coming up with training curriculum. She's amazing at talking about training materials and in a digitized platform. So she's also a good leader. I mean, she's put previous teams together, and personable. We got along like, I mean, talking to someone smarter than me didn't put me down or anything.
Yeah. Am I right that she has a master's in computer science?
She does indeed. Yes, she's got
That
a
helps.
master's. Yes, it does. It absolutely does. Especially when we're forming something with AI and VR. And yes,
My first thought, obviously, Pronto was a software-based business, but again, here's this guy who has successfully built sort of physical service businesses. How do you transition and transfer that knowledge and skill into building a software business? And, it comes back to your underlying ability to both delegate, which I'd love to know if you have any tips, and then how to transfer that knowledge, right? How do you actually unpack what you have in your mind so that your team can put it into the world? How do you think about those two aspects of being this fourth time founder, where you're empowering folks like Elena and the team to build something that you are going to be less involved in at an infrastructure level?
I like to talk in simplistic terms. Number one, I'm a big whiteboard guy. I draw it out. I can map it out. I don't know. I know nothing about software development. I can't write code, but what I can do is come up with an architecture of if this, then this. I understand Boolean. So I can write it on a board and say, if this, then make it do this. And
Yeah.
who do I need to put on the team to make my whiteboard come to fruition? And I think
Hmm.
as entrepreneurs, that's all we really need to do, is to build it on a whiteboard, make it talk sense. And can you explain it to a child? If you
Uh-huh.
can't explain it to a child, then you probably don't understand it yourself.
A question I had around SkillFusion is, are you currently at the place where you're making a trade, where you are saying to folks, we've built this, will you pay for it? Have you gotten there yet?
Yes, doors are open for business.
Cool.
We've taken our first dollar, so to speak. We've
Yeah.
opened up
How'd you get the first client?
marketing, the website, literally
Yeah.
people,
No
word of
way. It
mouth.
was inbound.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. So via the
Tell me more.
website. So I do a lot of speaking event, and we've got a lot of press. We engage a PR company. I well recommend that. Don't go too early. Whoever's out there listening to this, don't engage PR too early until your product's ready for it, because
Yeah.
it's the equivalent to opening the doors to your shop and you've got nothing on the shelves. It's all in the back being built. I told you I speak simplistic.
Yeah. Um, how are you leveraging channels like LinkedIn and your podcast?
Oh, absolutely. We have an internal team, social media team, that's Johnny on it. They really are. Everything that we do, I mean, this interview with you and this great show will be all over everyone in the company, and we encourage it. We say, share it. So LinkedIn's one, Facebook's another one that we utilize. But yes, every bit of PR that we do and that we get, newspapers, radios, podcasts.
What prompted you to start a podcast?
Boy, it was, I really just, it was, I wanted to do something that was, for the EV industry that wasn't selling a product. I did not want to sell a product. And most people out there that just want to say that, all they want to do is talk about a product. Like this interview, for example, I love the way you ask your guests the questions, generally, rather than all about their company.
Right.
So it was about that. I wanted to give the listener, hands-on, grounds up, for boots on the ground, of what EVs are about. So yeah, that was my initial, and 365 Pronto was one of they kind of really encouraged me to build that.
Is there anything that you think people are getting currently just really consistently misunderstanding about how the EV market is evolving?
Boy, everywhere I go, Nico, here in the UK especially, is people are saying it's not going to happen. I hear negative responses and, from the industry. But the important thing is, and this is my answer to them, then that is a perfect situation for you to do something about it. That there is money to be made. There are businesses to be formed.
Right.
Because don't take Rue's word for this. Look at the manufacturers like Volvo, Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors. All these people are, they're retooling. So whether it will be 90% of vehicles being EVs remains to be seen, but there will be a vast amount of electric vehicles on the roads by 2030, 2035. And the opportunities for individuals and businesses are absolutely immense.
There's so much that I want to learn more about from you. I'm sure there are others who just want to follow along. How can folks find or follow your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on LinkedIn. So Rue Phillips. on LinkedIn.
R-U-E, yeah, Rue Phillips.
R-U-E, Phillips.
You also have like a 7,000 person LinkedIn group, right? That you post to regularly.
That's right. Yeah. EV infrastructure. It's called the electric vehicle infrastructure. You could reach me on that. And also my email, I don't mind giving out, rphillips@skillfusion.com, rphillips. And if you want to have some fun, do a search Rue Phillips plus Black Sabbath on Google.
I love it. Ooh, definitely. Yeah, I encourage folks to do that because it's fun. And Bombs Open Bombays is the one that I'd, right?
That's right. Yeah, bombers can open Bombays.
Bombers can open Bombays. So, Rue, as we wrap here, if you could leave every person listening to this with one thing, what would it be?
The most important thing is think about it every day. And are you doing something every day that you think is going to lead you to success? Do something every day that leads towards that path to success. It could just be 30 minutes of emails. It could be meditation towards it, but think it, believe it, do it.
Rue Phillips, you are having a positive impact. You're a pioneer. You're one of the OGs in the solar industry. You're also co-founder and president of SkillFusion, a unique approach to providing electric vehicle operations and maintenance service providers with access to nationwide credentialed talent pool of electric vehicle supply equipment, EVSE. If you are an obligee and want someone to help you figure this out, you should definitely reach out to Rue. He's thought about it a whole lot more than most people I know, just about anyone. Rue, thank you for taking time. I hope to get out to Seal Beach and look out over the ocean with you, listen to you play Voodoo Child, and then do another interview.
Nico, it's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on your great show. Thank you.
You know, it's not every day we get to hang out with rock stars. Rue, thank you for taking time on your holiday to Cornwall to spend time with us, to invest in the businesses, the careers of our solar warriors and climate champions. I hope that you feel that the last 70 to 90 minutes, I'm not sure how long it's going to be when this editing is done, but I hope that you feel like this has been a worthwhile investment. I genuinely believe that if you're listening, you do. To that end, I'd like to know, what kind of things do you search for? How do you want to follow up on or bookmark or drill down in these conversations? How can we do this better for you? You could let us know by filling out our customer survey, our listener survey. Go to mysuncast.com. And as a way to say thank you, you will get a copy of our 10 uncommon books that have inspired leaders on the clean energy front lines. I've gone in and taken the time to parse what books are not New York Times bestseller, recommended by everyone, but have served a core influential piece to the top downloaded episode guests of Suncast. If you'd like to know what those are, or if you'd just like to be helpful, I would super appreciate and be grateful for you filling out our listener survey. You can find that at mysuncast.com. There should be a pretty big call to action there. And I want to thank our sponsors who ensure that the only thing you ever have to pay is attention. Of course, you got to trade your time. They trade dollars to help support the show. So please go support them, show them love. So grateful for the companies that have come along and supported this platform over 8+ years. All the way back to an N Phase was our very first sponsor. Thank you, Louise Morales, if you're listening to this specific episode. And thank you to SunGrow for sponsoring for 2 years as our platinum sponsor, and Trina as our gold sponsor. So grateful for the companies that have come alongside to support. You could learn more about them at mysuncast.com/sponsor. And that's also where you could find ways to partner with us to reach thousands of solar warriors and climate champions, just like they do each and every week. Remember, we're here twice a week. We'll be back on Tuesday with a tactical, practical episode. Give you insights into how to lead on the front lines. And another executive profile like this one with Rue on Thursdays. Because you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.